It is the fourth anniversary of the day that Russian forces surged across Ukraine's border, beginning Moscow's full-scale invasion. Ukrainians are commemorating the moment that happened in the pre-dawn hours, while also remembering thousands of soldiers and civilians who have died in the conflict since then. The Kremlin thought that it would capture Kyiv in just 3 days, but overestimated its own capabilities and underestimated Ukraine's readiness to defend itself. DW's Nick Connolly takes a look back at the turning points in Europe's bloodiest conflict since the Second World War.
Russia's invasion began just before 4 in the morning, on land and from the air. Soon afterwards, Russian tanks started rolling over the border into Ukraine. 10 days later, Russian troops had reached the Kyiv suburbs, barely 20 kilometers from President Zelensky's office. In downtown Kyiv, people could hear artillery fire on the edge of their city. The Russian troops had underestimated Ukrainian resistance and overstretched their logistics. By early April, Ukraine had pushed Russian troops out of the Kyiv region. As they did so, they came across first evidence of Russian atrocities, like here in Bucha. These were the scenes in Kherson when Ukrainian troops retook the city after 8 months of Russian occupation. Beginning in September, Ukraine retook thousands of square kilometers of territory in the south and east of the country. While Ukraine had gone hard and fast during the autumn, Russia's army went for slow and steady advance, mainly in the east. After 10 months of so-called meat grinder siege, Russia captured what was left of the city of Bakhmut. More than 60,000 Russian soldiers are estimated killed or wounded taking the city. After months of speculation, months in which Russia was able to build defences and lay minefields, Ukraine launched its long-awaited counter-offensive. The results were meagre. Ukraine was only able to shift the front line by a few hundred square kilometres. This was something no one had expected: Ukrainian troops on Russian soil. With the front lines in the south and east well defended and heavily mined, Ukraine struck where Moscow was least expecting it. Within just a couple of days, Ukraine had taken the town of Sudzha and surrounding villages in Russia's Kursk region. Beginning in early January of 2025, Ukraine stepped up its long-range drone attacks on Russian oil facilities. The aim is to disrupt the fuel supply to the Russian army, as well as reducing the Kremlin's export earnings. By mid-March 2025, Russian forces had retaken Sudzha, the largest Russian town Ukraine had occupied in the Kursk region. The rest of Ukrainian-controlled territory in Kursk soon followed in what many Ukrainian soldiers criticized as a chaotic retreat. Russian troops made steady, if slow, advances in the summer of 2025, but it wasn't where most Ukrainians were expecting it. It was the southern part of the front lines in the Zaporizhia region that saw Russia take most territory. By late July, Russian forces crossed into the Dnipropetrovsk region, occupying the village of Maliivka. Analysts at the Institute for the Study of War estimated that Russia occupied a further 4,831 square kilometers of Ukrainian land over the course of 2025. Russian missile attacks on Ukraine's power and heating plants in the depths of winter are nothing new. It was the impact of the strikes that was different for hundreds of thousands of Kyiv residents after January the 9th of 2026. Outages were measured in days rather than hours. Trams and trolleybuses ground to a halt. Many residents were told not to expect their heating to be fixed before summer. Ukraine's fastest battlefield gains since 2023. That was the headline after Kyiv retook the village of Verbove and surroundings in the Dnipropetrovsk region in a matter of days. Analysts connected Ukraine's gains with recent efforts to block Russian forces' access to Starlink satellite communications. Neither side publishes official casualty figures. After 4 years of war, more than 100,000 Ukrainian and 275,000 Russian soldiers are estimated killed in action. That's according to analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Russia still occupies approximately 20% of Ukrainian territory.
And let's bring in now Carolina Chimoy, who's joining us from Kyiv. So, Carolina, you have been on the ground over these past years. How have you witnessed Ukraine change, and what toll has the war taken on citizens there?
There are, of course, huge consequences on a social level, economic, human, but of course also psychological. People are tired. We're talking about 4 years of war. There are attacks and air raids almost every night, not only in the frontline cities and at the frontline itself, but also in big cities like here in Kyiv, the capital, but also in Lviv in western Ukraine. So yes, there is an exhaustion, but also people are not willing to give up territory. That is pretty clear. They are not willing to concede with anything that would come out of those negotiations. And the Ukrainian government knows that. This is why Zelensky has been telling also in the past interviews that he has given that Ukraine is preparing to keep on fighting for the next years if it has to be that way.
And we understand that Zelensky is expected to address the nation today. What else will happen on this 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion?
Exactly. Zelensky will give a press conference around 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Time is not clear also because of security reasons. Kiev time, Ukrainian time. We also know that the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is here in the city, and also the president of the European Council, Mr. Costa. This, of course, is also a symbol. It symbolizes a strong European presence in Ukraine, which is very important and also understandable because this is the deadliest war since the Second World War in Europe. So Europe is really standing firm next to Zelensky, and we'll probably see that this afternoon during the press conference that we're expecting.
There hasn't been much progress on the U.S. brokered negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Those will resume later this week. How much faith do people in Kyiv have in diplomacy? How are they looking on these talks?
We just came a couple of days ago back from eastern Ukraine, and we talked to many civilians, but also to soldiers about this. No one has really faith in those negotiations. They are preparing for more difficult and hard years of war, but they're not willing to give up an inch of their territory, and this is why they're not prepared to go on with any negotiation from their side on, especially the soldiers who have been fighting for 4 years. They're saying we wouldn't be able to see how Zelensky gives up territory after having lost so many people, so many people who have been fighting with us, friends and also civilians. So they don't really believe in diplomacy yet because they know that Putin is expecting Ukraine to give up territory, and they are not willing to go on with that. And again, Zelensky knows that, and this is what he wants and is trying to bring into the table. Let's see how everything ends, and let's not hope that the war goes on, but the country and the government right now is preparing for that.
How high is the hope that Putin will be held accountable?
It's perhaps a hope for many people here, but no one really sees it coming right now.
Carolina Chimoy in Kyiv, thank you.